if we wanted to say, okay, let's try to figure out what is the greatest film ever made, right? Because that's part of what that project is, or any of these best of lists or projects. It may be the case that we don't know. Maybe the best film ever made has been lost to time, right? Like the greatest doesn't mean it had the most impact or it was the most well remembered. The greatest might be one that most people aren't really considering.
I like that. But comparing this film to Jean Dielman, since that, came to top the latest Sight and Sound list, and I think they are pretty similar films. They're about the sort of domestic tasks given to women, what that looks like. And you're really with Joanna's perspective the entire time, whether it's just washing dishes or getting ready and putting clothes on and staying in this apartment this entire time, you have to sort of consider then, like, what does it mean that this is your entire existence? We haven't watched Jean Dielman yet. As I understand it, that's kind of what that film is about. Here you're seeing that almost 10 years earlier. You're seeing it from a different perspective. You're seeing it from the perspective of someone who was also discriminated against because of their African descent. So, I don't know. That's pretty incredible. And yeah. Okay, it's 1966, and we're in Senegal. No, we're not. We're in your ears. It's Some Like It Unauthorized. But we're talking about the feature film debut from Ousmane Sembène, Black Girl, La Noire de, and I'm Jay Brooks Young.
And I'm Zach Domes.
And here we are, we're watching the first feature-length film from an African director on our list that we go through chronologically, but also maybe the first sub-Saharan African-directed film. I see a lot of places write it as first that got international attention. I don't know what the record would show exactly of who was first, but I mean it's a groundbreaking film, and we had watched his first short, Sembène's short, Borum Surret, or The Wagoner, which comes out 63, 64. So we got a little bit of familiarity, but yeah, I don't know yeah. You got any thoughts? You got any thoughts, Zach? You tried to cancel this episode. You didn't want to talk about African cinema. And I said, I won't let you cancel this.
Oh no, you're gonna get me in trouble. Now you're gonna get me canceled is what's gonna happen here. Yeah, no, I found this to be definitely a dark film, but a wonderfully made one. Part of the reason why I jokingly said, do we want to cover something else, is just because I don't know how to sort of discuss this one in terms of, what it's doing new, in terms of the whole scope of cinema history, especially with African cinema. I'm not well versed in that. And then in terms of the storyline and in terms of how it kind of flows, it's quite simple.
Yeah.
But I think in the way that it kind of flows and then how it ends is very poignant and very powerful. This director has a lot of heart in what he does. I can see this as being a film that people would see and either be frustrated by it or be very heard in a way, very understood.
Yeah, I saw some reactions both from the time and more today as well, going in both of those directions. Yeah, you saw at the time European and American critics just kind of go like, Yeah, it's okay if a little simple, if a little heavy-handed. I think there's a Roger Ebert quote where he's like, we don't really get into the minds of the white family, like what's going on with them, you know? We just like, it'd be really nice to explore what they're thinking of feeling. But even today too, yeah, I see some people that say it's doesn't quite work, maybe. And I think a lot of people now say this is a powerful film and they appreciate it, and that's how I ended up feeling. But I don't know, it's hard to I don't know, try to put yourself in a perspective of thinking like, how would this affect me if I was like some sort of egregiously racist person, or like this is a film that's trying to get you to understand a perspective you're not familiar with, to try to like initiate some kind of social change. And it's like, yeah, what is it? How do we measure the success even? Or what is it ultimately doing? You know, sometimes you watch films like this and it just feels like, I know what I'm supposed to feel, sort of. Or like, I know what I'm supposed to get out of this. So it doesn't like stick with you as hard, or it doesn't like change something in you, or affect you in a way that is meaningful, I guess. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, who's for, you could think, who's the audience for this? And so like, I'm not imagining that a egregious racist person is going to be watching this anytime soon from the West. Right. I don't think that most Americans who we might consider to be racist still are popping this onto their movie screen at any point soon. But at the time, for, some of Africa that was dealing with these kind of racial tensions, obviously South Africa is one, but many of these nations over there, like Morocco and others, have had to deal with French kind of aristocrats or wealthier people who come down there and have their own ideas about what they can or cannot do. And I'm sure for some of them, they go down there and they're considering how to be more empathetic and caring. Obviously, that exists, but there's also the tendency to forget that these people have a humanity all to their own, a culture and an experience and all these things. And so, yeah, how many French people at the time are watching this and are the kind of person who this film might be for? I think that's a decent amount,
Maybe, yeah. I don't know. The interesting thing is yeah, I think Sembène was thinking a lot about the Senegalese audience, because he didn't get into filmmaking until his 40s, and a lot of what he was doing as an adult, or at least like what he was gaining success in, was writing novels and things, as well as like public speaking. But after Senegal and other former French colonies gain independence around 59, 60, he goes back to Senegal. He'd been living in France, I believe, and decides that writing is not the avenue towards social change. A lot of the population in Senegal at the time was illiterate. Writing was a luxury, in his words. So he looked to filmmaking as the mass medium that could speak to the people. So I don't even know if the aim is ultimately for a white French audience as much as it is for a Senegalese audience, and fostering some kind of social consciousness and trying to lead people towards social change. I mean, he'd gotten really into Marxist and other sort of leftist literature. He was reading Frantz Fanon. I just learned about this leftist writer, Frantz Fanon, who was a psychiatrist, and wrote a lot about like the psychology of colonized peoples and the effect on art and these things. And these were the type of people that Sembène was reading and thinking about. And then, like, what are we going to do as a people now that we're independent? Like, how are we going to move forward and improve our society? Like, these are the types of things I think he's thinking about when making this film. So, like, it's interesting because it's a film about dealing with a white family, this relationship to your colonizer, your former colonizer. But yeah, I think it's also very much for the Senegalese audience.
Just curious if you have any idea about this, what the situation was like for the Senegalese around that time in terms of being able to watch this or having access to this film in cinema format or whatever that might be.
That's where some of the difficulty of finding good sources on this stuff has been an issue for me. Mm-hmm. So I don't know very well what it looked like. Certainly, it seems like, there was not a film infrastructure, film production infrastructure at that time. And that's due to the Laval Decree from 1934 that barred people in French colonies from making films themselves, which stayed in effect until they gained independence around 1960. So you just didn't have a film industry there. I imagine you had some theaters for stuff, and like white filmmakers would come and make films in those places and probably show them. And actually, I did hear about, like, in Algeria and Tunisia, they were seeing films because France Fanon was over there during the Algerian War, helping to treat people who were fighting with the like liberation army. And he was telling some of his patients to go see films, to like use that as therapy. So, like, yeah, I mean, I imagine as like most places, especially in a city, like at least like the Wagoner, and I imagine some of his other films take place, like, you probably have some theaters, but I can't say super specifically. One thing with this film was that he was able to take it to the first Carthage Film Festival in Tunis. I don't know how you say that, in Tunisia, which was set up for like African and Arab films to be shown and kind of for those different filmmakers and producers and stuff to collaborate. That was set up, and the first festival was in 1966. So Sembène was able to take Black Girl to that festival, and it won their top prize. So that was like, I don't know, some people saw it there, I guess you can say, right?
Mm-hmm. Did it show anywhere else, any other festivals?
I think they had something in Dakar. There was another like African festival, but I don't know if it showed anywhere else. I think it wasn't until maybe 1969 that it first screened in the U.S., because I think that's when I saw those like different quotes coming from. So yeah, I mean, I think to an extent this was ignored, at least by the sort of Western audience, for quite a while.
Yeah, I think I saw somewhere that it was considered part of like the third cinema umbrella, what was more typically a Latin American movement, but this can kind of be looped into that. People in other third world countries doing things that are being overlooked by the other people, regardless of the efforts that the festivals were doing. There's still a lot being made that they may not be totally linked into. But, one thing that comes to my mind in terms of the impact that it has, and, this may be redundant to some degree or already obvious, but, if a film is overlooked and then it's rediscovered, I think the value in that is really an artistic one. It's for all the artists out there who are making work now that may be being overlooked now. It's kind of like don't worry about whether or not your art it gets seen. Just do the work and commit to your passion, and then if it finds its place in the world at some point, that's what matters most for the art. This is another one of those cases where maybe the film is more impactful today than it was back then. This kind of thing happens all the time. So yeah, so something like this being on the Sight and Sound, that's where its value comes to for me. That's where I think this film finds its value is in how it resonates to us today.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it kind of it went over people's heads at the time. Just like, this is kind of radically feminist on top of being this, perspective that had not been delivered on film before. The direct perspective of, an African director, writer, these things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, another thing to say there, just to drive that point home, is like, if we wanted to say, okay, let's try to figure out what is the greatest film ever made, right? Because that's part of what that project is, or any of these best of lists or projects. It may be the case that we don't know. Maybe the best film ever made has been lost to time, right? Like, the greatest doesn't mean it had the most impact or it was the most well remembered. The greatest might be one that most people aren't really considering. So yeah, that's just to say that I find popularity a fairly irrelevant barometer for whether or not a film is great.
I like that. That's funny because I saw a Letterboxd review, I think it was by Milo, but comparing this film to Jean Dielman, since that, came to top the latest Sight and Sound list.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they are pretty similar films. They're about the sort of domestic tasks given to women, what that looks like. And it's pretty incredible, the sort of lingering that Sembène does in this film, where you're totally with her perspective, Juana. You're really with Juana's perspective the entire time, and just these shots that take their time, whether it's, just washing dishes or getting ready and putting clothes on and staying in this apartment this entire time, like, you have to sort of consider then, like, what does it mean that this is your entire existence, And as we haven't watched Jean Dielman yet, as I understand it, that's kind of what that film is about. Here you're seeing that almost 10 years earlier. You're seeing it from a different perspective. You're seeing it from the perspective of someone who was also discriminated against because of their African descent. So, I don't know. That's pretty incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's many films that display the same kind of content or theme. I'm thinking of Roma as another example by Caron, sort of a woman who is a maid as well, and of a more native descent in Mexico, and even speaking that more native language. Or even this film I just saw recently, Volver, which had a lot of scenes of women cleaning and really focusing on that aspect of the labor that typically women are kind of culturally told to do, I suppose.
Yeah, I think those are both terrific films. But yeah, it took a while for that to be something that was considered sort of worthy of the purview of cinema, and to make it his first feature film, I think speaks loudly of kind of what Sembène was interested in. And I read that he also foregrounded the roles of women in his best known novel, God's Bits of Wood, which is about a railway strike, sort of taken from his experiences in 1947 during a Dakar, Niger railway strike. But that foregrounds women's role in the strike. So this is throughout his works, written and film, he's thinking about the lives and perspectives of women. And a part that really spoke to me was when she has that flashback, and she's with the boyfriend, and they're kind of arguing. They're like not on super good terms, but she goes back to his like apartment or room or whatever, and there's the great shot of him. He's sort of upset and he's smoking, and he's standing in front of this Congo flag that has Patrice Lumumba in the front of it, who was like, you know, this sort of revolutionary figure in Congolese independence before he was assassinated. I think that was in 1961, and Mobutu came into power through a coup. But that's incredible because, you know, Lumumba was so sort of idolized and looked up to among these different African nations at the time. Mm-hmm. And here you have this sort of figure that I don't know, you have this sort of relationship between her and the boyfriend, and it feels like, you know, there's a way forward for Senegal and for Congo, for these other African nations, where we're going to be independent, but it's still going to be a patriarchy. And here's, you know, it's going to be kind of my boyfriend's or my husband's or whatever. Like, it's going to be his way. It's going to be what he wants, you know? And I kind of see that as motivating her towards wanting to go work in France. And, you know, when she makes that decision at the end, I feel like that plays in as well. It's like, not only am I forced into this sort of domestic slavery here, but I'm going to be that second-class citizen in his home as well. So where is there left for me to go? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. That is a good point. There's layers to all these types of things. And what he does here is he shows us a kind of a figure or character who would be kind of placed somewhere at the bottom of those layers. And so kind of getting the worst part of it on multiple fronts.
Yeah. And I will recommend people watch Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat, the documentary that just came out last year, which is about the coup in Congo. And I was not super familiar with that history, but that documentary is really terrific. And it's, you know, it talks about the history of the music, the sort of the American blues and jazz, and like how America was like using that to sort of do these covert operations. Like they were sending Duke Ellington and other people to do concerts in Congo and these African countries. And then, you know, they were sending like CIA agents along on these trips covertly. It was crazy. But like, I don't know, man, that speaks to just kind of one of the themes of this film, which is like, you can't do business with these white people. Like, you can't take their money. You can't believe that like they're going to do right by you. They're going to, you know, you can take this job and it will work out and you'll get what you want out of it. Like, that's never going to be the way forward, unfortunately. I think that's the ultimate takeaway. You know, it's like, she doesn't want that money. And after she kills herself, like the husband goes back to where her mother is and tries to give her the money, and her mother will not take that money. You know, like, that's blood money, and that's like, it's not worth it. It can't be repaid, sort of what these people have done to the Senegalese, you know?
Yeah, I know. You know, as you say that, I'm thinking of how it feels like there might be two main groups of people who kind of live outside of their home country, existing in like the international boundaries. And one would be those who for sure have an appreciation for the other cultures, and they are scientists or anthropologists, and they're there to discover, and they'll make friends and whatever. That's a fine group of people. But then there's this group, I feel like, who are people who they see these other places as a way to kind of have more freedom to manipulate or evade the laws of their own land. And that's just has to be included in whatever history you talk about. Like, there is a group of people who will constantly be seeking an opportunity for themselves, even if it's like not good and for sure not moral or ethical. And by the time we get to this period here, where slavery's been outlawed in a number of different countries, so you don't have that. You still have this kind of labor intensive, dehumanizing system. And because money is a transactional thing there, somebody like these characters that are featured in this film can feel like what they're doing isn't wrong, right? Like they may be looking at their past, their ancestors, and say, yeah, what they did, some of what they did, that was not good. But where we stand now, I'm paying her, so I can yell at her if I want to and treat her whatever way I want. The ignorance is, of course, in now, absolutely apparent, and not good. Not good.
Yeah. Well, it's like, what has to be recognized is that there is a wall between these two parties, and communication will never get through that in the truest sense. Like, they cannot sort of explain what they want or how they feel to each other. They cannot make this known.
Do you think this was the first full-length Senegalese film?
I think so. And
and there hasn't been very much, I would say.
No, and I don't see what these sources I'm looking at don't say is if there were like kind of B movie or just sort of throwaway things being made.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found was that it was actually through some like French financing that he was able to make those first two short films, that France had set up this sort of like new kind of committee for financing African cinema, I guess as a way to sort of keep those relationships between the countries positive. And part of me wonders if that's actually kind of maybe a reaction because the Soviet Union was trying to step in and gain sort of the influence over the African countries after they were independent, and France wanted to try to counteract that because Sembène is one of the filmmakers who gets a scholarship to go study at the Gorky Film School in Moscow and goes there for a year before he makes those short films. So part of this was like French finance. What was the original question? I want to.
The original question was if it was the first Senegalese film.
Yeah.
Well, feature film.
Yeah. I don't know. I wonder because when he presented this script to that like French committee, they actually rejected it. I think because it portrayed the French family in such an unfavorable light. So, to my understanding, he had to kind of independently finance this film and really do it on like a shoestring budget. So, if not the first, it's definitely the first that's sort of free of that kind of French influence, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But to what you were saying about sort of the two kinds of people that will be around internationally, like it's probably worth saying that he did Sembène worked with a lot of white French like production people
right.
on these films, the cinematographers and the editors and stuff. The person who's listed as the producer, Andre Swoboda, was apparently like an assistant director on The Rules of the Game. That's a really crazy connection.
Wow. That's wild.
So like, he's not saying, or at least, through his filmmaking, he's not saying like, we're going to do this totally on our own. But you have to be super cautious and like, he's the boss on this film, right?
Right. And part of the reason why I mentioned that is because of what you said about the reactions from some of the critics and their thoughts on it. You gave that quote about, wondering what the white family's perspective is and what their thoughts are. And yeah, first thing that came to my mind when you said that was, how many films have been made where the perspective of the black person or whoever it might be is not well established. Yeah. So many. But then the second thing that comes to my mind there is that this is a film from the perspective of this maid who can't speak French that well. And so this is putting you in her experience for what it's like to not know what the heck is going on with those people that she's working for. There is one particular moment in the film when you are revealed a little more about who they are. And I think in this particular part, it kind of separates them from like any old people who have a Senegalese maid. And that's when they forge that letter from her mom. I think that's a very telling part.
What do you mean forge?
Do I have it right that she's they sit down and they start reading this letter from her mom, and she I can't remember now if it's voiceover, but she kind of says, "This isn't actually from my mom."
No, I don't remember it being that way. I took it as that was the letter from her mom, but when they start writing the reply, that's supposed to be from her, Joanna, I took it as her saying, these aren't my words. Like, if I could write, I would say, this family sucks and all. She says a couple different things like that.
Interesting. Well, either I misunderstood that or I watched a different version that was translated incorrectly. Even despite that, they are, his attitude in that moment, and obviously her attitude the entire time, is annoying at the very least and dehumanizing. It does a good job illustrating that with a system like this one that we have that allows for this kind of, you can basically pay for somebody to labor for you all day and not get in trouble for that. It's illustrating that is wrong and that certain laws should be in place to not let that happen. That's one thing.
Well, yeah. It's just a smorgasbord of microaggressions. Yeah. Over and over and over again. It's super important that you don't get the interiority of the white couple that, like, that's closed off to her. We hear her thoughts and she doesn't understand what they want or why they brought her there. That's like she's left in the dark about this stuff. And it's important for the audience to sort of understand that and be in her shoes. Yeah. I mean, it's really well done. And, I don't know. These guys were thinking about this just in ways that, like, people, especially these Western critics, did not understand. And I'm thinking about the film Soleil by Med Hondo, which is another film that's about an African in France, and it's following this character who is immigrated there to find work, and it's a similar sort of situation. It's just time and time again, people are going to treat you like an object and look at you like you're not human, or just like treat you like a child, or just like expect you to conform to the white French society. Yeah. It's just like when you see that from the black perspective, it highlights just how absurd the whole thing is, that you're supposed to, like, kind of, put your history, your culture in a box and pretend that you're like a white French person, but we're also not going to treat you like you're anything but a second-class citizen.
Right. Well, they did keep the African mask on the wall, so they did have that. They did have that as a memory to where she came from. No, yeah, great points, and this is why ultimately she goes from sort of in the beginning saying, what is this place? Like, this is nothing like where I'd come from, where there's culture and community. This is a different kind of place where the parents and the kids all kind of do their own thing and they're not really together. She goes from that, which in some sort of way is kind of sharing with us an empathy for the white family, right? Like, their culture is sort of broken in certain ways, and they may be acting the way they act because of that. But then as one watches, we realize that she's in this world for this long. She's completely disconnected, and of course that amounts to a very dark ending, which is emblematic of how one would feel being that disconnected.
Yeah, I love that line that she says about like where are all the people, like the doors are closed all the time.
Yeah, and where she's from, they don't even really have doors. They have blankets and things like that. Yeah.
No, but you're outside. You're among people, and you're constantly interacting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you need each other, right? In places like that, the folks need each other. Here, you always have the sense they don't need each other. I mean, there's even a part where they have a fight and he goes off to his bed and you find him with nudie sex magazines in his bed. They are all, as you can watch these French films depict that very same thing. There's this shift in society, and it doesn't seem to be a great one for many people.
Yeah. Well, that's fun because Sembène is very observant about sort of what's wrong with French culture outside of this sort of racism. Mm-hmm. But also, he's starting to show you the seeds of as I understand, he does more overtly in his later films, which is like kind of critique what's going on in the Senegalese society as well. And there's that really quick moment when we flash back to Senegal and she's out walking around, these three men in suits are like walking by and they're kind of like talking over each other. I think one of them says like, I'm a man elected by the people. And I think another one goes like, hey, be quiet. Don't let people hear you say that or something. And I can't tell if they're supposed to be politicians and that's like making fun of politicians or if they're just like regular guys themselves that are making fun of politicians, or are they supposed to be like kind of symbolic or are they like regular people and that's showing like distrust with politicians among regular people? I'm not sure,
right?
But that's just like very quickly he's getting at that kind of thing where in the sort of vacuum of power, when Senegal and other countries became independent, you had, these fast talkers coming in saying, here, I can lead us. And, that turned into a lot of corruption, a lot of people, making sure that they got paid. Yeah. He's got his eye on that already, it seems. And yeah, I think he's got a lot more sort of social critique in his later films as well.
I mean, if he wanted to write, and that's what he was doing first, I'm sure he's extremely well read too. So observant in that way will cause you to include all those types of layers into your film. Most likely, a lot that kind of goes over our heads in this film, as simple as it is, due to the time distance that we have and the cultural distance.
Yeah.
Do you remember that film we saw in Berlin? I think it was called Statues Never Die or something like that.
Yeah. The new Isaac Julian short.
Yeah. There was a lot of conversation in that film between that philosopher and that art critic, I suppose, about African art and its role in history, especially European history, and how his point was that there was kind of like a revival of art critics kind of acknowledging that African art was just as meaningful as any other art that's made, but that they would give it a term like exotic art or something like that. And he was pointing out like that's not necessarily the best way to do it. You could say a different word, but exotic still tends to put it in its own box and almost exclude it by you think you're including it, but you're still excluding it, sort of thing. And anyways, I think of that when I think of The Mask. I'm thinking of That Mask again, and that final scene where the boy is wearing it. I found that so impactful, right? Because you've seen this mask on that wall in the French people's home. Anytime she goes out to the living room, she goes back into the kitchen, like that mask it's right in the middle of a completely bare wall in this almost bare house that these French people live in. That's her only connection to where she comes from. Just an empty mask on a wall. And at the end, the boy, the boy's holding the mask up to his face, and then he pulls the mask down, and there he is looking at the camera. I found that to be like a wonderful, example of humanity and an example of kind of showing, in a way, like what's behind the mask, what's behind the art, is this huge history of people who we some still to certain degrees overlook or forget.
Yeah, this thing that had been reduced to just an object on a wall, has life, has a history behind it that's still very much there, even if it's just totally removed from its context and just turned into just a pretty ornament.
Mm-hmm. Right. It's reduced to an ornament. I think in the beginning he even says he was like, oh, this one's a real one. Like she brings one. And
yeah.
He goes, oh, this one that was there. The one they had wasn't real or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a connection that people have made between this film and the Frantz Fanon's writing, because one of his big books is forget what it's called. It's like Black Voices, White Masks, or something like that. But that he's written about the sort of the way that African art is transformed, and just colonialized art in general is transformed through oppression, through struggle. That like the meaning behind this art changes because of the context of being oppressed, and that something that was just, I don't know, it had a different context when it's just a mask that you buy on the street and you take home with you as an African person. Now, when it becomes something that can be just used as an ornament by white people, now sort of reclaiming that and wearing that, and this it takes on this meaning of resistance, sort of, that like you're not going to sort of take away our culture. This is still ours, and this you can't reduce this, sort of. But yeah, that that meaning, it can't be the same anymore. It's forever changed through that sort of struggle against the colonizers.
Right. Yeah. Well said. I guess I joked to you earlier on that we weren't going to have much to talk about. I guess there's a lot packed in here. What a wonderful film. This is one of those films that probably wasn't on the any Sight and Sound list prior to.
It wasn't. I can tell you specifically. 2012 was the first time this got.
Oh, it was on the 2012. Okay.
Yeah, it was. Well, yeah, it was not published because it only got 5 votes. It was down in the 300s.
Oh, I see.
But yeah, this latest list was the first time it was actually on the published list. He got 1 vote for his film Mondavi in 1972. That was the first time. One vote for another film in 82. He gets 3 votes between different films in 92. It's truly he was overlooked, in the truest sense. We literally haven't seen a film like this up to this point in history. It's significant just for that, but it's also just really considerately made, and it does kind of have an effect on you.
It does. I am curious if did it get noticed to any degree. You may not know this, but I think there'll be another film that we see from Senegal coming up called The Journey of the Hyena or something, Tuki Buki.
Right.
I have no idea. I just know that's like the other Senegalese film coming up. I wonder how much that one got noticed. We'll cross that path when we get there, I suppose.
Yeah. I think if I remember right, that did have kind of a big European festival premiere and was sort of immediately better known than some of Sembène's early films like this. Yeah, I think that's right.
Well, be sure to watch it if you haven't yet. Oh yeah, good idea. Yeah, coming up, both of our favorite directors, Ari Aster, is releasing a new movie, as many of you guys probably know, Eddington, which was premiered at Cannes and did pretty well for as divisive as a film as it seems to be. Kind of a neo-Western dealing with politics and COVID times. So we're going to watch that and talk about that, and it's going to be an in-person. I'm going to be traveling to where Jay Brooks is, so we'll do that one live. And Wavelength.
Not live, but in person.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
It will be live to each other.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, this will be so curious. How are we going to feel about Eddington?
Yeah, one thing you mentioned this before too, and I think I pointed it out. Like, we're both still waiting for one that we vastly disagree on. That'll be fun to talk about.
Yeah.
So maybe Eddington will be the one that we strongly differ on. We'll have to see.
You'll have to tune in and find out.
I mean, in some sense, if it would be if there was going to be one, because we're going through all these classics. It's hard to vastly disagree on some beloved, classic that stood the test of time. Eddington is a brand new film, controversial.
Yeah,
I'm hoping that I'm hoping we end up becoming Joaquin Phoenix and
Pedro Pascal.
Facing Pascal at each other. Yeah, face it off. It'll become a face-off.
That'd be great if we just blow up at each other in person. Yeah.
Tune in for that. And head over to unauthorizedpod.com for any info, such as our Letterboxd and links to that and a form to fill out any questions, comments, things like that. And hey, by the way, 13th episode.
Yeah. We just keep trucking along.
We do. No one can stop us.
Why would they even try?
Well, it's one reason is because it's unauthorized. We're doing here. So
right.
But keep it a secret for now. Keep it on the down low.
Don't tell your friends. This is a secret podcast.
That's right.
Yeah.
Man. We told you it was unauthorized, so we warned you.
That's right. You don't know what you're going to get mixed up in.
The back alley of podcasts.
Yeah.